Hi, thanks for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here and happy to present our newest installment on addressing new buzzwords across the industry, digital customer experience imperative. Let's go ahead and jump right in. As mentioned, we're going to cover a few things. We're going to cover kind of what it is, we're going to cover why it's important, and we're going to cover pretty much how to get your organization aligned. So I think when we jump in, there's a lot of crossover in the industry right now as it pertains to digital customer experience and another buzzword that's floating around, which is digital transformation. And while I think they're both cut from the same cloth, they do have some significant differences. So in this presentation, I'm just going to be going through digital customer experience as opposed to digital transformation, which is another webinar for another time. But if you have any questions at the end about those specific differences, I'd be happy to answer those in more detail. But as mentioned, just focusing on digital customer experience. But if you're familiar with both terms, you'll probably see some parallels. So really, what is it? What are we talking about here? And it's tough to define, and there's lots of definitions floating around the web right now. I like to personally use this one. I think it's the need for a platform to deliver positive digital experiences across all touch points. So when we're talking about touch points, we're talking about email, we're talking about your website, we're talking about social, we're talking about even SMS text in many instances, because that's being controlled via digital technologies. And the term platform is pretty critical here because it implies several things. It implies, one, that we need the technologies that enable us to actually make this possible, to have these positive digital experiences. And I would think that platform also implies that we need the processes internally to be able to manage those. But what it really boils down to for me is two things. It's consistency and relevancy, and I'm going to break down each one of these. So digital customer experience as it pertains to consistency. Well, really what we're talking about is how people view us, how people interact with us. And now that digital is becoming most likely the most frequent touch point that someone experiences with your brand, even beyond if you have a retail establishment, I'm guessing that they probably are spending more time interacting with your brand online than even in the store. This is particularly true for professional services, and it really kind of starts to define who we are those interactions. And what this really brings up also is that we're talking about brand consistency here. And no one does brand consistency better than one of the iconic brands of America, which is, of course, Coca-Cola. And brand consistency is pretty important. And having a consistent approach across not just design, but how your customers interact with your product is one of the key attributes to success and being able to recall your brand. And we're talking about delivering that type of brand consistency through digital channels. Now, with Coca-Cola, not only are we talking about their logo here, but we're talking about a product that's being manufactured. And for them, the consistency comes from the manufacturing process. We're talking about the taste of Coca-Cola, the sugariness. We're talking about the acidity and the carbonation. And every time we crack open a Coca-Cola with minor, maybe regional differences, we pretty much expect to have that same flavor. And I think you can say that about many different brands, particularly in the food and beverage industry. When you are traveling a lot and you show up in a foreign country, and you've been eating foods from there for 6 months, when you see that McDonald's, you're pretty excited that you can rely on the fact that that McDonald's hamburger is probably going to taste pretty close to the McDonald's hamburger that you have back at home. On the web, though, that really translates into something else. It translates into the UX, the actual architecture of the experiences, how your navigation is laid out, for example. Of course it translates into the design. Is our design consistent across various platforms? And I think most importantly, does that pertain to our content? Because our content is the way that we're communicating, and is that communications in line with our brand, and is it consistent across all those channels? Now, that actually gets quite a bit difficult, though, and it's not nearly as easy as manufacturing. because you're dealing with a whole different landscape, and when you're dealing with communications, it becomes another matter entirely to generate ones that are consistent across all types of communications and platforms. In fact, rather than just a big manufacturing plant that's able to produce the same type of Coke over and over and over again, you need multiple different technologies all working together. And those technologies could be your content management system, which is able to supply a mobile experience as well as a web experience. Those technologies could be a marketing automation system, which are able to produce a email that is in line with the design of your site and produce that in a consistent way with that that reflects your messaging. But it also consists of processes for governing these mass types of communications, and that could mean workflow. Organizations typically fall into a couple categories. At one end of the spectrum, you have organizations that are struggling to produce content altogether, and that is another type of problem. Those organizations are struggling to produce content and distribute it because probably lack of resources or maybe not a content strategy. Some organizations are starting to produce massive amounts of content, and what those organizations run into is the inability to control the quality of that content that's being produced. Going back to the Coca-Cola analogy, if Coca-Cola had started to try and ramp up and scale massively, it would be the equivalent of those Coca-Colas starting to taste funny or different, or different types of carbonation, different acidity, or God forbid foreign particles getting into the Coca-Cola. So that's the type of thing that we're talking about when these companies start developing massive communications. We need the processes to make sure that we're reining that in and getting the quality under control. And all of that is tied together by cross-functional skill sets that may not exist within the organization today. Really, it's very difficult to have specialists. The type of people that are creating content for you are likely the subject matter experts within your organization. They're not necessarily digital marketers. They may have never actually logged into a content management system before. This is particularly true in professional services firms. The people who are actually doing the work aren't necessarily digital marketers. In my case, I'm creating content right now in the form of this webinar, presenting this webinar to you. I just happen to be lucky enough to be able to be in a position where this is what I do all day, but that's not always true. So it's definitely, while there's parallels in trying to gain the consistency that manufacturing has, it's significantly more difficult to attain that. I do want to walk through a great example of just a company that I hold near and dear to my heart, and I interact with them on Twitter all the time. Is Virgin America. I think that these guys have really figured out their brand, but beyond figured out their brand, they've managed to create a very, very consistent experience, a very consistent and positive customer experience across all their platforms. They recently launched their new version of their website, and if you visit that site itself, you'll quickly get a sense that it is in line with everything that you experience from Virgin America if you interact with people from the counter all the way to what's on the plane. Additionally, they have great different types of capabilities that allow me to manage my accounts, which I'll get into a little bit more detail later. And as you can see, they've got really clear, consistent framework, design, UX as it pertains to even their mobile devices. And a little bit more difficult to show, but the experience that I've had, given that I fly with Virgin America, is that they are equally as responsive in the social channels such as Twitter and Facebook. They regularly respond to tweets, they regularly have different promotions, and they tie that all in together very well with the information that they have about you. All that connects to that same brand image that they are trying to portray and that they have succeeded in creating in their main vehicle for you to experience their brand, which is in the in-flight experience that you're having when you're flying from your destination. Their airplanes match the design, look and feel, and communication that they have across their website. If you've ever flown Virgin America, you know that they have a pretty funny safety video. That safety video and the way that the language is in that safety video is reflected on the website, and it's reflected on the mobile devices. Now, they have a platform that enables them to do this. I'm sure that behind all of this is powerful technology that allows them to curate the type of content that goes out. When they want to produce some messaging, that message almost certainly is going through a governing process, through a workflow, whereas it's being sent to an approver. That approver is looking at that piece of content and then ultimately decides whether or not it fits their brand or fits their type of communication scheme. One of the things that you hear brands talk about all the time is customer service as one of their brand values, and it's definitely critical. And in this sense, customer service as a brand value needs the same type of consistency online that you would expect to have customer service in person. So let's use a quick example. If I were going to a Nordstrom's, I would expect that the salespeople there would be fairly knowledgeable and respectful and would take me and help me find the type of clothing that would work with me very well. I've had very good experiences with Nordstrom's. And if you want to return something, they've got policies in place that make that process very simple. Now, that needs to carry online, because if I'm interacting with Nordstrom's in the digital sense, and I'm not experiencing that same level of customer service, I'm not able to get the same kind of concierge experience that I'm having. I'm not able to do returns simply or easily because the technology is limiting. Then that's something that's certainly not consistent with my brand values. So in that sense, when we're talking about, again, digital customer experience and the consistency that comes with the brand, Nordstrom's in this instance would not be very consistent. It's not what I'm expecting that Nordstrom's experience to be. Further, really what we're talking about, if you value some customer service online, is online management of my account or my information. And that leads me into my next point, which is relevancy. Relevancy is the next key critical function of having a good, solid digital customer experience. And by this, we mean personalized communications when and where I want them. Portals are a great way to have this, and a lot of companies have portals that are managing bits and pieces of their information now. But let's take a few examples really quick. Let's take a look at something like a professional services firm. If I'm producing a lot of content, I'm going to need to be able to go in and manage that content. We all get a ton of emails every day, and I want to be able to manage the type of information that comes my way. So if we're using eDynamic, for example, if you wanted only digital marketing information, we should be able to have you log into our system and indicate to us that that's the type of communications that you would like to experience. We should also be able to supply that to you via a platform that enables it through different channels. So our primary vehicle is via email, but we should also be communicating via social. If your desire is through text message to have these types of pieces of content delivered to you, that kind of capability exists now, and a lot of people do opt in for receiving information via text. And still, I guess some people send out direct mail, and they might still want it in paperback form. And if that's an option that you want to give, you should be able to allow your customer that type of experience. Someone that I think does this very well in a professional services sense is McKinsey. You're able to manage your subscriptions with McKinsey quite simply. I definitely get alerts from McKinsey and read a lot of their content, as I do from all sorts of other vehicles. But McKinsey, I'm very, very able to understand the various publications that they send to me. I can get it monthly. I can get just the most popular content, and I can segment it by region or the type of business function that I'm interested in, which, you know, in our cases would be something like marketing, sales, or strategy. So that's essentially what digital customer experiences is. And, you know, if I was just going to summarize that again, it's consistency across all devices in having that same kind of brand presence that you're trying to exude. And just as important is you can have consistency, but if the consistency isn't a positive experience, it's not necessarily in line with a great digital customer experience. So you need to have that kind of personalized communications. And why that is, well, there's lots of reasons. So I'm going to gloss over these. Chances are your industry is changing and is becoming more competitive. I would probably say that's true for the majority of people on this call. Also, there's a good chance that there's pressure to reduce your fees or costs, your actual pricing structure as it pertains to what you charge your clients or charge for your products and services. And also, I'm sure that your competitors are almost certainly working on this. They're reading the same materials, they're attending the same webinars. There's a good chance that their organization is trying to move in this direction. But all of those kind of are ancillary to this reason. The main reason is that your client is changing. Your client now 100% expects these types of things. That badge, that 100% satisfaction guarantee, does not mean the same thing now that it meant 5 years ago. My 100% satisfaction guarantee implies that you're going to communicate to me in a personal way, in a one-to-one way, that you're not going to be mass marketing to me, that I'm going to have a positive experience online just like I have a positive experience when I visit your store. I've come to expect it. And there's a few reasons. You can really blame Amazon, and I guess companies like it. Amazon has started to train people that getting customized recommendations and customized experiences and being able to manage my account at all levels on all devices is pretty much the norm. I know when I interact with Amazon Prime, I can purchase movies. I can purchase movies on my Wii without having to my Nintendo Wii without actually having to update any credit card information or interact with anything on the Wii. I just touch it with a click of a button. We're all very familiar with Amazon's different recommendation engine, which has been noted in quite detail in other types of documentations. So customers like Amazon are really paving the way. And if we think about it, if you're in professional services or if you're in retail, at the end of every client in a professional services industry, I mean, is someone that's using Amazon. So they're starting to get trained in this exact type of method. It's not that our clients aren't using these types of systems. Our clients are using these, and they are becoming accustomed to them. But it isn't all Amazon and companies like its fault. The reality is that expectations have changed because the demographic makeup of the people who are making decisions has changed. You know, we had 80 million baby boomers who are basically starting to retire, who aren't necessarily making purchase decisions like they used to make purchase decisions, who already have lots of things that they need from a retail standpoint, and likely aren't making any major business decisions at this time in their life. On the other hand, we have 46 million Generation X and 76 million Generation Y and millennials that are increasingly gaining purchasing power and are increasingly in positions in a B2B sense to make those decisions. These people are what we call digital natives. They grew up with digital. In the case of some millennials, you have folks that learned how to use an iPad before they even knew how to read. So of course these people, their expectations of how you interact with them online is going to be very, very different because it's been ingrained into their DNA. It was part of who they were growing up. So these digital natives are now calling the shots. They're the ones making decisions. And Amazon, creating the type of personalization that they have, is really in response to the fact that digital natives have been raised in a digital landscape and are constantly bombarded with different types of information. And it pays off. That's why Amazon has invested so much in it and why folks like McKinsey have invested so much in their subscription panel. this type of digital customer experience where you have consistency across all your devices, and relevancy as it pertains to personalization and portals has been actually documented to show a 63% increase in customer satisfaction. So again, if that's important to your brand, that's a great way to gain customer satisfaction right there. And we all know that customer satisfaction almost certainly has an impact directly on revenue. Further, it's been shown to increase site traffic. It has led to large increases in top funnel leads for B2B organizations, and of those leads, a higher percentage convert because they have better, more personalized knowledge about your company. This is really all kind of hard to implement, though. It really takes a big kind of cultural and structural shift within your organization. So how we do it takes a number of steps. And there could be, we could probably chat for another 2-3 hours and barely skim the surface of exactly how to do this, but I did my best at gathering it down into just 7 steps for you to take a look at. And this is really our approach that we use at eDynamic to take a look at the way that we need to understand how an organization can move towards digital customer experience. Quick 7 steps, which I'll go through in detail. Of course, every organization needs a champion to be the person that is advocating for this across the entire organization. The next step would be to define personas, followed quickly by the customer journey. That kind of culminates into something we call the digital vision. Finally, we look at the gaps and challenges that are needed and preventing us from accomplishing that digital vision. We then define the capabilities that are needed in a technology agnostic way to go and fill those gaps and challenges, and ultimately execute a project roadmap that will get us from our beginning point to that final destination, that final vision. So starting with a champion in your organization is pretty critical, and typically this is led by the CMO 54% of the time, but also CIOs and CEOs are pretty common when it comes to leading the charge for digital customer experience. That's really critical, though, to have someone in the organization who is fully in charge of implementing this, and that person needs to assemble a cross-functional team across the entire organization that will help guide them and be on board. Ultimately, when we need to start implementing these things, that those people can then take that information and disseminate it to the rest of the organization. And if you haven't yet, even if you're not implementing kind of digital customer experience, I think it's very critical that every organization should have personas. Here's an example persona. Basically, a persona is an archetype of a type of customer. You'll probably have 3 to 7 various personas within your organization. You should outline who they are from a demographic standpoint, the things that they need to know from you, the things that they want to do with you, and put a little bit of character into them. They're meant to really give a personal lens to who you're interacting with on a regular basis. In B2B, we often just refer to people as clients, but as mentioned earlier, it's easy to forget that at the end of every one of those clients is a person that actually is going in and making decisions. And what we want to do is find out what that person cares about and how they interact with our brand. So persona development is pretty critical and ultimately is going to be what shapes the customer journey. Here's an example customer journey. I pulled out all the corresponding information that would go along with this particular one from our client. But really what this is before a customer knows who we are, all the way through till after they've become a customer and we need to continue to service them, what does that look like? So if you take a look at, let's use the first column, industry awareness, and the first row, needs, values, wants. So we're taking a look at the industry awareness column. This is the column where someone has not even heard of our industry in this particular example. They need to be aware that our product category even exists. Or maybe, of course, they've heard about it, but they don't necessarily know a whole lot about it, and they're seeking information just about the product or service in and of itself. So that first row, we would then go and define the needs, the values, the wants that that person is interested in to make a decision to help them move on to the next stage, which would be learning about your individual company. Following understanding the needs, values, and wants, we then need to understand the type of channels and the content that we need to create to cater to them. So at the industry awareness stage, the type of content might be things about defining the industry itself, defining what that product looks like. It could be through email. More likely it's going to be through advertising messages, television, other online channels like banners. It's going to be through a Google search, right? So if we're not participating in something like a Google AdWords campaign, or we're not properly search engine optimized, when someone is looking for industry information, they're not likely going to find it from our source. And then the supporting technologies to help us get there. In the Google sense, one of those technologies might be an ad-serving platform utilizing theirs, like Google AdWords. It could be a serving platform that helps us deliver banner ads, and it could be something like an email marketing tool, and so on. Through brand awareness, their needs, values, and wants are going to change. The channels and content are going to be similar, but are probably going to change as well, and the technologies are going to change. When they're deciding in the evaluation stage whether or not to use our product, they're going to have much different interest. Many different types of information are going to be needed for them to actually make a decision about whether or not to work with you. Same with channels and the technologies to support it. Conversion, they've made a decision. What does the onboarding process look like? What do we need to do to make sure that they become a customer that is enjoying the process? What are the technologies and the channels of communication that we need now that they've purchased from us to communicate that we value them as a customer? And finally, you know, the old adage that it costs significantly more to acquire a new customer than to maintain an old one is still very true, and digital allows us to do that like never before, and that's what the development stage is all about. How do we keep them engaged with us? What are their needs, values, and wants during the development stage now that they've purchased from us? What channels? Again, probably email, probably SMS, in some cases now direct mail, and what technologies do we need to serve those types of channels and content to make that a possibility? The customer journey culminates and allows us to create what's next, which is the digital vision. It's 100% based on that customer journey. We answer the question, how do we want our customers to interact with us, and how should we respond? And it also answers the question, how does that align with our business objectives? So that whole vision should paint the picture of what we need to be doing to reach those customers. And in that conversion section, we're really trying to understand how those types of interactions align with our objectives. The digital vision, though, is difficult to accomplish, and there's things within the organization, gaps and challenges, that are going to prevent us from doing that. So the first step is really to conduct organization-wide stakeholder interviews. Ask them questions like, what do you spend your time on that you shouldn't be spending your time on as it pertains to digital? And this could be someone within the marketing department, and they might say something like, I'm spending a lot of time trying to manage documents, but I can't find documents that I need to be able to upload them to the system. Or I spend a lot of time asking someone for the latest email, something similar to that. And more generally, what prevents you from communicating with your customers the way that you need to? I can think of a few examples that I've heard from clients. One of the things that I've heard is that we've sent our clients 10 emails in one day before. And that's because it's a very large organization and they have a varying degree of subscription management systems. So the organization didn't have the technologies that it needed to be able to control the levels in which emails were sent out. Various divisions were sending out multiple emails. An entirely different organization, still with email, once had marketing send an email that completely contradicted an email that sales had sent. And they had indicated that their customer responded back, well, I'm not really sure which one I'm supposed to be interacting with. In that particular case, had the marketing automation system that that company had been using aligned with the customer relationship management tool, the type of conflicting information would have been likely reduced. So gathering these gaps and challenges is definitely the next step. And finally, answering those gaps and challenges with things called capabilities. Capabilities are simply the needs that employees have to do their jobs. Now, these are really agnostic to technology, and here's a small example of what we call a capabilities blueprint. So in document management, maybe I need a centralized location for my documents. For asset management, versioning, all of these things are going to help with that ultimate goal of providing a digital customer experience at a higher level in the examples before, by not sending too many emails, or by understanding the type of communication needed or the type of capabilities needed to ultimately close those gaps and meet that vision. Next, you map those capabilities to the various technologies. So we started talking about the technologies that are needed. If we need to have a personalized communications tool set where we can communicate with our customers on a one-to-one basis, that means that we're going to need a certain type of marketing automation system, for example. And once we've mapped those technologies, we can then develop a roadmap that will help us implement these various projects to reach that final vision, because we can't do this all at once. It's going to be a time-consuming process. And one of the projects that will always close out the roadmap or be a part of the roadmap will be a big change management piece. We need to have internal communications, internal marketing across the entire organization to get buy-in, as well as training on these new systems that enable people to have the type of digital customer experience that we're referring to. So I think I'm coming up pretty quickly on time. I did want to open it up to audience questions. Feel free to follow me on Twitter as well and send any questions over there, or you can email me directly at daniel.huss@edynamic.net. So go ahead and send in your questions, and I will hand it over.
Yeah, we do have a few questions, Dan. So the first one, and a very interesting question, is analytics weren't covered much. How do analytics fit into customer experience?
Yeah, you know, I think I could probably do and I have done whole other webinars on analytics itself. Analytics is pretty much the backbone of digital customer experience and personalization. When it comes to understanding your customer, it becomes very, very necessary to start breaking up how they're interacting with you online, what they're engaging with, and to do that you have to use analytics and insights. So for example, if we wanted to send more personalized communications in a passive manner, where not necessarily through a subscription management system, but through our actual website just delivering more personalized content, we need real-time analytics to know what people are viewing, what interests them, and we need the ability to tag that and understand conceptually the type of information that falls into that category, and analytics drives that. All of this should be tied back. I think I used the example also when we were talking about email of sending conflicting information between sales and marketing. Now, analytics and insights would help drive the ability to tie in the CRM system with the marketing automation system, so that, for example, sales might have a insights dashboard that would give them the ability to look at what people are viewing, the information that marketing has sent, and so on. So that using analytics to be able to make those types of decisions and then putting it into a format that is going to be helpful for each stakeholder is pretty critical. Great question.
Yeah, agreed. So the next one is, we have a hard time even getting people to use the CRM. What can we do to get this adopted at our company?
Yeah, that's a great question. As a point of reference, cultural change is cited as one of the biggest hurdles to being able to implement something like a digital customer experience process. So it's a very important question, and a lot of people are trying to tackle it. I'm a huge fan of when we look at that project roadmap, each step of the way, you have to have internal marketing. Just like you market out to someone else to get buy-in, you need to foster excitement and get involvement during the process from internal stakeholders. Now, if they're involved in the process themselves and they're able to give you their types of requirements that they need, it's going to definitely reduce the effect of not getting buy-in or having them not use it. If, chances are, if the CRM is difficult to use, and sales didn't necessarily have any input into gathering the requirements for that CRM, it might not necessarily fit their needs. I don't know if that's true for your organization, but I know that's true in a lot of cases when people implement these technologies. So looking at the internal stakeholder, just like a customer, marketing to them and gathering their requirements at every stage of the process will help mitigate that. But again, it's still going to be a difficult and uphill battle that requires definite top-down leadership to promote throughout the organization. Thanks.
All right. So the next question is, can you give a few more examples of types of projects that go into the roadmap?
Yes, absolutely. So the types of projects that would go into the roadmap, I think I outlined the first two, right? Build personas. The next one would be implement do the research to be able to map out your customer journey, which also probably deserves its own webinar. But additional projects would be evaluating technologies. Maybe in the process of going through this, you discover that your email system can't do a lot of the things that you need it to do. So one project that you would have in that roadmap is we need to evaluate our current email system versus the different email systems that are out in the marketplace now, or marketing automation systems that are available to us, and compare the features and see if we need to invest in a new one. So that would be another project. Maybe you find that things like as part of your brand, customer experience is a major goal, and it comes up during the customer journey that as part of the development phase or the evaluation phase, people really need online chat. So it would be first to evaluate online chat technologies, and then second to evaluate the internal processes and change needed to implement it, as well as the additional resources, and finally to put that technology in place and get those folks trained on it and actually start to use it. So those are a few examples of different projects that you would see in a roadmap, a typical roadmap.
Great examples. So there are a few more questions, but we'll have to get back to them after the webinar. So that's bring the end of the great webinar. Thank you all for joining us the webinar. I hope it would have helped you learning what is digital customer experience and the steps to align your organization. The recording for today's webinar will be available on our website within the next 3 business days. We'll also be sharing the webcast URL with all the attendees via email. Meantime, you can reach out to us at contact@edynamic.net for any questions you may have. Thank you once again.